Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This is the Ever Forward Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Rebelo. I'm a 20-year-old entrepreneur who chose entrepreneurship over the traditional college path, inspired and driven by the goal to retire my mother and help other middle Americans just like her learn about and invest in multifamily real estate and other asset classes. And today, I'm joined by a man who's doing just that, Brandon Richards. Great to have you on the show, my friend. How are you?
Good, man. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. 20 years old. Holy smokes. And I just saw your post, a 64 unit dude. At 20 years old, I I don't even know what half of this world even meant, let alone entrepreneurship. So that's freaking cool, dude. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, I appreciate it. It's guys like you that help build the network that I was able to leverage to get to where I am today. But this is not about me. This is about you, my friend. So,
All
Brandon,
right.
we've talked a little bit. I've been following
Mm.
on social media for a while, but for the audience, who are you? What do you do? And how did you get here? Basically, who is Brandon Richards? Anyways, the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I assume you want a shorter version. Long story short, I've been in the real estate game in various facets for about 10 years. And I started like a lot of people, got my real estate license, figured out that's clearly not the way to real estate wealth, and started diving into wholesaling, flipping, and eventually and I don't have them anymore, but I bought some low D class apartment buildings, storage facilities. Then I started doing some notes. That's where my business is right now. But it took me a long time to wrap my head around transitioning from those big paychecks from flips, and um, yeah, long story short, I've done a lot of things. I've wholesaled mobile home parks, hotels, restaurants, businesses. They've all done some form of satisfaction for me, right? But never was an end all be all for myself. And so my main goal is freedom. And as a wholesaler, a flipper, your day to day is heavily regulated by 1,000 tasks in those types of business. And then same thing with rental properties, aside from multifamily where you scale and you got property management. Um, when you're managing a single family, you don't have a life until you have dozens of properties being managed by a third party, right? And so I didn't go that route. I've had some really bad situations go wrong in my single family rental world. Same time frame as my apartments. Anyways, to make a long story short, I've landed on notes, and notes is what I have found to be the easiest, most stress-free cash flow. Meaning once I've created that note, I'm getting net passive income until the end of the time. Not really. I mean, wherever that note is, 2 to 15, 20 years. And I'm not getting those contractor phone calls or tenant phone calls or property management phone calls day in and day out. I can go travel, I can go on vacation, whatever it is. And I know that if they're having problems, well, I'm the bank. They're the owners, and I don't get those phone calls anymore. And it is saving my life, quite frankly.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad, and thank you for sharing your story. It's cool to see the progression from getting a real estate license to wholesaling to apartment complexes, and now you're doing notes. And I think that gradual increase is something that everyone can adapt, where you're just getting your foot in the door with the real estate industry, and you can eventually start to scale. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
But there's one commonality when I bring someone onto the show, and it's
Mhm.
something about a hard asset, or it's something you can invest in physically, and
Mhm.
99% of the time it's real estate, and that 1% times either oil, gold, or silver. But let's go back to real estate.
Mhm.
Brandon, why real estate? You had a choice to go any other route, but why did real estate stick out to you? Why did you choose that path?
Um, well, I mean, if we're going to cut down to the chase, it's money, right? So let's see, I was roughly 23, 24 when I bought my first business. I was owner operator of a carpet cleaning company, making ends meet, but I wasn't getting rich, right? I was a young dude. I wanted some money. And I was like, well, this wasn't the right avenue. And my buddy had a glass company, and we were both doing decent, but we weren't making the leaps and bounds towards our financial wealth, right? So, what do? You freaking start Googling stuff. And in general, most Americans know that real estate is the avenue that most millionaires and decamillionaires are in, whether they started there or they're passively or actively investing in real estate. Real estate is always that shiny object that most Americans know is the goal, right? Um, and but it's hard to determine what niche or avenue of real estate to get into. And that was what me and my buddy did. And long story short, I went into wholesaling, he went into building. And I, uh, to your point, I chose real estate because essentially Google says, well, that's how you get rich, real estate. And
But
but
it's
you don't
true.
know you until you get into it, you're like, that's not true at all. And so that was my progression over the past 10 years is like, oh, well, that didn't work. Well, that made me some money, but I'm a freaking mess. I don't sleep. I have, tens of thousands of interest bills and contractor bills. And like, um, so over the years, I was like, okay, I like that. I hate this. I like that. And it all funneled into land and land notes.
That's awesome. So basically, it was like trial and error over the years to figure out what you
Yeah.
actually wanted to do. And
Yeah.
I think that's what most people screw up on, where they want to find something that just sticks with them and they can stick with it permanently. But in fact, like I also did wholesaling. I also, tried my own little landscaping business, but I'm like, this isn't going to scale because I'm chief
Right.
cook and bottle washer. I'm sure you understand.
Yep.
And, I was like, I can't scale this, but with multifamily, I could scale it. And now that's my niche. And I was like, I can do this. Wholesaling, I'm sure the cold callings back and forth, and it's
Mhm.
like, okay, I can't do this. But yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head where it's like, search it up. I mean, Google backs it up, so does everyone else. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. It doesn't sound like it at all. It takes a lot of hard work and effort, and I'm sure there's like a lot of rah shish kumbah in the networks about it to say like, oh yeah, I do real estate, but there's a lot of
Mhm.
work to back that up. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that again. But you keep talking about notes. I
Mhm.
am unfamiliar with notes, and my audience is as well. So, is notes the next big thing? What drew you to notes? Like, and why are you starting to take that path?
I wouldn't say it's the next big thing. I mean, if you zoom out, the entire real estate mortgage world is revolving around notes. Your apartments have notes. Every single house in this country has notes, except for the ones paid off, of course. But then, the government has their taxes and fingers and everything. But for me, I learned about notes, thankfully, way in the beginning. The downside is I didn't take my own internal advice to go that route in the beginning. I let people talking from both sides convince me that it wasn't the route to go because of unfamiliarity. Is that a word? So it took me a long time to actually make my move there. And there's one deal that triggered, and I was like, well, I should have done this many years ago. I bought a single wide mobile home in Texas for 15,000. I used private money. I wrapped that note, sold it to an end buyer for 54,000, and I made 460 bucks a month net. I can't remember the numbers now because I sold it, she defaulted and all that jazz. But it was a pivotal moment for me because at the time I had a few duplexes, a few single families, my apartments, my storage, and all of those properties, almost daily, I was getting phone calls. This guy's not paying rent. The garbage bin burned down. The freaking tree fell on the property. Hey, I can't make my rent. It's only $800, but can I give you $200 now and 600 in 2 weeks? And it was just like, what is going on here? And so when I sold that mobile home to that lady, she called me a few months later and she said, "Hey, my water heater isn't working." And my heart said, "Ooh, I need to help her." But my brain said, "Nah, bro, I'm Chase Bank. That's your problem now." And so that's where rental properties become an issue because the second you have an AC, a heater, a water heater, a toilet leak, anything that goes wrong, your yearly gains are gone, wiped. So your only benefit for that property for that year is the tax advantages, which are excellent. Obviously, that's why everybody gets into it. And eventually equity. But if you're getting, I mean, your ass beat day after day from maintenance calls, your cash flow is gone. But that note, maybe $464 or whatever it was every single month, no matter what, until she defaulted. But then I took the property back and I sold it and I didn't have a loss. So Um, that was my moment. And I was like, I need to do notes. And so that's kind of where I'm at.
Oh, that's actually pretty smart. So it's like going from landlord and maintenance man to basically becoming the bank.
Yep.
It's kind of similar to almost like infinite banking. You're like, okay, hold on, I'm gonna do this, and then it's almost like a promissory note where you're gonna get that income coming in. But
Yep.
now if they default, you could always just sell the property. You're getting paid anyway, and I
Right.
think that's an interesting science where, or at least business strategy where you can start diversifying. And I know there's people out there that have like a lot of single family homes or quite a few duplexes or triplexes that are built on a portfolio, but they're like, okay, I just don't want to keep doing this anymore. And if
Yeah.
they switch over to notes, that could be a different option. And I never even knew that. So that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Well, there's quite a few people. I've been in a lot of high paid masterminds. And so I get to see a lot of people's businesses behind closed doors. And it's the same struggles in everybody's business. It's contractors, it's overhead, it's all the things we just discussed. And as of late, I know quite a few operators that have three, four, 1,000 single family houses, and they're converting all of them over to notes. So they're going to their tenants and say, like, hey, you've been a good paying tenant for a year, 2 years. Why don't we convert this into owner finance? And this is your property. So, um, shoot, there was something I was going to say. And then in like traditional real estate where you have a rental property or even apartment complex, you're not very liquid. When you are the bank, you have a million options. You can sell the note, typically at a 10 to 15% discount. You can sell partials. You can bundle them into what the financial world calls the real and sell them in bulk to institutions. Like you are far more liquid when you're acting and operating as quote unquote the bank, as the note holder, right? And so there's just a lot more. Um, Ease of capital if you either want to transition into either a new asset class or another property or want to free up money for whatever situation. And it just it's versus like if you have a house, then you got to go to the bank. You got to provide all of this documentations. You got to qualify, and then you can either go DSCR, you can get a HELOC loan or whatever it is, but it takes time, right? HELOCs and all those take 2, 3 months. So it's just way easier. And again, freedom and stress free in the note world.
I love that. And there's a lot of people that are feeling the compression in the industry right now. New administration, new market change, Fed share update, and all of that. And they're
Hmm.
starting to feel that compression where it's like, do I want more stress? Do I want more headaches?
Right.
And notes could be an option. And honestly, I think that's a very good idea. But to transition to that, especially with headaches, fears and everything, Brandon, what was a pivotal point that you had in your career where it was like, it was not your biggest hardship in your career, but I would say your biggest lesson in your career so far through real estate. Walk us through that.
I mean, it's point blank when I was rehabbing houses. I started out easy. I would do one at a time, and then I transitioned to two at a time, and I eventually got to a point where I was doing 8 to 12 at a time. And when you're doing that type of volume, the amount of money moving at any point in time is stupid. And when you're raising private capital for all these, this may sound like, a chump change to some people, but I was paying 12 to $25,000 a month in interest payments to my investors. And so when you're pushing around all of that money on a daily basis and a single deal goes bad, it hurts. And so it was this constant like thing in the back of my head where, well, I hope I made the right call, but it wasn't just one property at a time. When you're doing that type of volume, you potentially have hundreds of thousands of dollars of potential risk and failure at any point in time. And so that's where a lot of flippers get into a hole. And I've had maybe 2, 3 deals go bad where I thought, well, shoot, this is a home run, dude. Like I'm about to make 50, 70, $80,000, whatever it is. And by the time I got to the closing table, I'm writing a check to get out of it and didn't feel good. And back to notes and why land, I could have gone into single family owner finance. I know a lot of people in that as well. And I like that model. I just didn't choose that route. But Land is less capital intensive. I can raise money for any given land project um, generally overnight because I'm operating in like the ten to $80,000 price point versus if I need to go and wrap a private note or pay cash for a house, you you're raising 50 to 180,000 roughly. And at some point, the scale starts to tip at a certain dollar point that doesn't make it work number wise owner financing houses. And generally that's just south of 200,000. At that point, it neither works for the prospective buyer nor the investor. Though you can owner finance a $10 million apartment building, right? It's just numbers typically start to tip in the wrong direction at some point. And anyways, to your point, the rehabbing is what I was like, I'm done with that, dude. It's just like,
Oh, I
uh,
bet.
I'll, I'll give you a real world example that I did here recently where I lost some money. And so I did a lot of flipping in Texas. Then I moved to Arizona. I did a little bit of flipping, but I got into placing double wide manufactured homes. And I developed this niche, and I was one of two guys in the area that did it right and was able to do it faster than everybody. I could place a home and sell it in under 4 months, and my average profit was 75 to 125,000 on one deal. And I was like, hell yeah, I am going gangbusters on this. And so I was offering and buying land left and right. And as I was about to move to Alaska, I had my last one under contract that was set to close the day after I got in the truck and left. And so by that time, due diligence is up, appraisal is up, like everything's set to close, right? Long story short, yeah, it's a really long story short, but point is, uh, the day of closing, I found out that they no longer wanted to buy the house. And since the dad was being a co-signer and providing a lot of the down payment, he was like, "Yep, I don't want to buy a house anymore for my daughter. I found her a rental property. Sorry about you." And at the time, I was like, "No big deal. I'll go to the next guy." Well, the next guy never came. 6 months later, I finally sell it. So when I anticipated making roughly 55,000 on that property, after all of the interest accruing over the next 6 months and the market shifting at the most horrible time early last year, not only did my market value go down by, I had it at 455, I closed at 422, so I lost 30,000 in market value and an additional 30-ish thousand in interest. So I
Ooh.
end up having to go in the closing table with almost $30,000 to get rid of that property. And all of those factors are outside of my control, right? I had appraisals, I had proof of concept because I had done a dozen of those before, and I had buyers left and right. But one guy's decision cost me $30,000, and of course, market. But anyways, those types of hassles and burdens and obstacles will certainly happen in the note and land world, but you're not going to see a $60,000 shift in not only equity, but loss, or loss isn't a word, but an interest. So, anyways, point being, the risk is what it essentially moved me into the land game.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
you definitely have your scars, your bloodies and
Oh, a
bruised
few.
throughout the industry. Yeah, how do you know how you're still walking? But anyway, Brandon, you are still continuing to move forward with your business to this day. And just seeing your progression, right? How do you stay the course? How can someone stay the course when they're getting hit with all these things? Like, of course, they can't control market factors and outside factors, but how can they still stay the course to keep pushing forward with their mission despite them being hit left and right?
A lot of that's just personal grit, but also structuring your company appropriately. A lot of newbies and even seasoned guys will market, get their deal, and because they're encompassed with that deal, their marketing slows down. So the pipeline goes dead or it gets small. And so as long as you can ensure that as your projects, doesn't matter what it is, and it doesn't matter what niche you're in, as long as you Don't let the day-to-day of your projects or deals slow you down or stop your marketing. You can ensure your pipeline indefinitely, right? And that's where I messed up in the beginning. Like for years, I would get a deal and I'd be so busy getting those deals done and contracting and contacting contractors and such that my marketing would slip or responding to inbound leads would slip. And so when I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get a payday, I'm gonna get a payday, and then I get paid at closing, I'm like, oh shit, where's my next payday? So I would say, well, you've got a lot of internal dialogue that needs to be, fortified, and you need to make sure that the foundation of your business is solid, and that's keeping that pipeline full. And not only full because your follow-up has to be legit. Because in general, we all know this, especially in multifamily, you're not going to call the next commercial multifamily broker and get a deal, right? It's going to take months or years of follow-up with that broker for him to like and trust you before he brings you a deal. Same thing with sellers. Unless there's some sort of now motivation, you're very likely not going to get that deal on phone's first phone call. It's going to take you 6 to 15 touches to get that deal, or 6 to 15 touches for like, dude, stop calling me. So pipeline and follow up is like the lifeline, the blood of your business. And so that's what I would say.
That's awesome. And you know what? I absolutely agree. It's the persistence and the grit that's going to keep you going forward.
Mm.
And with real estate or any factor of any investment, you have to have the grit and the systems in place. And I try to keep my pipeline full, and I've been refining my systems in CRM for better follow up because I know and you hit the nail on the head again. Those are the two key factors that's basically the blood of the business that keeps it going. Without it, your business is shot. So
Yep.
thank you for sharing that. And Brandon, how can people reach out to you? How can they connect and work with you?
I mean, I'm active-ish on all the platforms, but primarily Facebook is my biggest platform, I guess. Yeah, just my first and
Awesome.
last name. But my companies are OPF, so they're pretty easy to find. OPF stands for Operation Freedom, my nonprofit. So they're all my brokerage, my two holding companies, they're all OPF.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening in and if you want to connect with Brandon Richards, in the video description and podcast description as well, his website will be available along with his Facebook page so you can follow him, reach out, and then you can connect. But Brandon, unfortunately, we're out of time. This has been such a great podcast. For those that are listening, go check us out on Apple, Amazon Music as well, and Spotify and YouTube to listen more to more episodes as well and to get some more information coming down the pipeline. Build yourself better and bigger every day. Live better, live bigger, always move ever forward. And Brandon, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom on this show. I appreciate it, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.